Good morning, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing a video to you on a subject that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know, and I want to draw a connection between two ideas. One of them might be completely new to you, but the other one I'm pretty sure you've heard of. I'm certain that you've heard of, and that's Jesus Christ. So there will be a connection to Jesus in this video. The first idea that you may not be familiar with is one that I have recently read about or reread about. I read this great book by Jon Krakauer, Into Thin Air. If you've read the book, it's amazing. You already know. It's about his personal experience climbing Mount Everest. He did that. He's quite an accomplished author and mountaineer, apparently, and other things. He's a great dude. But anyway, in the book, he mentions a few things that I thought were extremely interesting. He talked about how sometimes when people climb Mount Everest, for example, or other places they go where there's some kind of strange atmosphere or strange environment, like up at the top of Mount Everest, it's extremely cold, you might imagine. There is a low temperature, there's low atmosphere. It's actually 1/3 the density of Earth atmosphere at sea level. So I learned a lot from this book. But the interesting thing is, when certain people have challenges, and there have been many, many fatalities of people trying to climb Mount Everest, apparently, I've also learned from the book, including on his trip, there were, it sounds like about a dozen deaths on this particular day when he climbed Mount Everest with these people over the course of a week, it sounds like. It went sideways, a big storm rolled in. Sorry to spoil the book, but a lot of people died, and he obviously did not die. He survived to write the book, but he described this feeling when you get up to near the top of, say, Mount Everest, for example. You have supplemental oxygen. If you're a normal mountain climber, there are some people who've done it without supplemental oxygen. It's not recommended. It's extremely difficult and almost impossible, apparently, not to do, or to do it without supplemental oxygen. You bring a canister or a number of canisters of oxygen with you, and you breathe that above what they call the death zone. Because the atmosphere gets so thin, you cannot actually survive up above 29,000 feet, because your blood oxygen starts to go below a point where your brain can sustain itself. You start losing brain cells, and you have a ticking clock at that point. As soon as you rise above a particular altitude, without supplemental gas, you start losing brain cells, and you have to complete your task and get back down below that altitude, or else you will literally die within days. You get what's called high altitude edema. It's anyway, there's a number of diseases that can affect you immediately. So what he said in the book was that you get this illusion that there's something suffocating you. So you have your mask that's giving you the oxygen, right? And he described this feeling that the mask itself was suffocating him. But it's an illusion, because the mask is actually distributing oxygen at a slow rate. Obviously, you want to conserve your gas, but the illusion is that you're not getting enough oxygen because you're still below your normal intake level, even with the supplemental oxygen. So you have this constant urge to pull your mask off, but as soon as you do, it's even worse. It's like the atmosphere is actually the problem. Not the mask, but your body is telling you constantly that the mask, this thing that's helping you, is suffocating you, and it's this profound illusion. I think that he could have actually explored this and dug into this idea, but he didn't really. He just mentioned it, and he kind of glossed over it in the book. But there's a connection, like I said, with Jesus Christ here. So sometimes we have illusions, we being people in general, just the average person, we attack our helpers. Now you start to see the connection. We attack our helpers because something's telling us, our environment, our bodies, our minds, our subconscious, whatever, is telling us that something's not right. And I believe this is what happened in the time of Jesus. A lot of people were suffering. It was woefully disorganized. There was a great deal of violence and unrest and ignorance and misinformation, abuse of the people by corrupt, mean Romans and administrators. The empire was in full swing, and they, being everybody, had this impression that the person nearest to them, they likely had this impression, I should say, the person nearest to them was the culprit, such as the mask on your face, which is actually helping you, but it's not, making everything perfect, unfortunately. So because it's in close proximity, it's in contact with you, it becomes a lightning rod. Many times, and I think this is an apt analogy. So what happened was Jesus was the mask that was giving oxygen, but things were so bad, the environment was so bad, and the best that he could do as a man at the time was provide supplemental oxygen, metaphorically, but he became the lightning rod. He was mistaken for the problem itself, when in fact he was a delivered helper, a necessary helper. And I've mentioned in other videos, I believe that Jesus would have been more effective alive than dead. Unfortunately, most people just accept the crucifixion as a good thing. They celebrate it even, and I think this is a mistake. I do. I think that there are a lot of things that happened in the time of Jesus that we aren't told about, that the Bible doesn't include. We know for a fact that it doesn't mention any kind of romance. It doesn't mention any kind of, going to the bathroom, the biological stuff that every human has to do. It's not in there. So what else is missing? Of course there are things missing. And I think that one of the big things that was missing was what led him specifically to the cross. And I've made a video about this. I don't want to rehash it. But I think that he made a mistake. I think that he missed an opportunity to really seize power and become the emperor himself, long story short. I think that he could have and should have organized to fight back, to destroy the opposition, to take the power from the soldiers and from the empire, the emperor, and become emperor himself. I think that's what was supposed to happen, and unfortunately he didn't see that as a possibility, and he didn't try to do that. I think he just never actually tried, and he ended up getting to a point where he was painted into a corner and he had to reverse himself, at which point it was too late, because the question had been asked, are you our new emperor? In many ways it was asked. So he was crucified to see if that was the case, and turns out he was not, because he declined. He declined when he came in on a donkey. He said, look how weak I am, look how powerless I am, I'm just out here speaking my piece, I mean you no harm. And they said, well, it's too late. You've already stirred up so much trouble that we are going to have to put you to the test. You can either defend yourself or not, but here's your opportunity. And I think that he could have turned the soldiers onto his side. I think that they were ready to defect if the question was being asked. But again, I'm just getting way back into the video I already made. So the point of this one is mistaking your helpers for things that are hurting you, just because they aren't doing a perfect job, when in fact the real cause of your troubles is the environment, other people, other factors, which is, in conclusion, at 9 minutes, why it's so important to separate things, why it's so important to correctly identify causes and effects. It's fashionable lately, it seems like it's fashionable for people to mislabel the problem. They say this causes that, when in fact there's many things in between this and that, if you know what I mean. They say something is right because if you don't do it, you'll get in trouble. Well, not exactly, because it may still be right and it may still be good behavior. Just because someone's threatening you or telling you there's a consequence based on their set of rules, their own invented set of rules, doesn't mean that it's not the right thing. But this is what you hear. You hear that consequences dictate course of action, and what we're doing here is mistaking the actual cause of something for one that's not correct. It's not the real cause. So if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. They say genius separates things. They see the differences primarily, not the connections. But all you hear about is connecting things. So we connect this to that. Look how it's connected. These things are similar, so they must be the same. But really, the harder part and the smarter part is separating them, understanding the ways in which they are not connected, because that's what's going to help you ultimately. Reach out if you like with questions or comments down below, and have a great day. Thank you.